Hubble has photographed thousands of galaxies outside our own, and using these tools, we've learned that they're not islands isolated and separate from one another. Rather, they interact in built-in scales. Hubble's data lets us watch eons of cosmic tug-of-war unfold in a single minute of video. Creating just one frame of this can take 3 hours of computing time. We can even model what our own galaxy might look like in 3.75 billion years when our nearest neighbor Andromeda gets too close. This is CGI, yes, but it's not the work of our imaginations. In a way, it's even more than we could imagine, thanks to the work of one special telescope 568 kilometers above us. Hubble doesn't just let us see into the future of the cosmos, it takes us on a journey through the past, through the history of everything. And these tiny red dots, hiding among more than 10,000 galaxies, are perhaps the most amazing thing on that journey that Hubble has ever seen. Galaxies from the dawn of the universe. The light from these galaxies in the deepest reaches of Hubble's view takes more than 10 billion years to make its journey. This ancient light reveals them as they were just 700 million years after the Big Bang. Hubble is more than a telescope. It's a time machine that lets us watch galaxies evolve and change over our universe's history. It's a window into the history of the universe itself. Saying there are tens of billions of galaxies is hard for our brains to understand.
Would you believe that someone used this to bring in 5 figures a month, and they didn't have to 3D print or sell a single thing?
Day broke over the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard on October 28, 1943, the same as it did every morning. A calm belying the chaos taking place off the city's shores and beyond. By that year, the United States' involvement in World War II had reached a fevered pitch as a vicious sea battle between Allied ships and German U-boats raged in the Atlantic. The seriousness of this conflict meant that October 28th was not just any morning in Philadelphia, but the culmination of months and years of top-secret research conducted by the U.S. government with the intent of seizing naval superiority once and for all. Evidently, the U.S. military, together with some of the top scientific minds in the world, men like Nikola Tesla and Albert Einstein, had been working on a new technology which would make their ships invisible, a sort of cloaking device from the pages of science fiction. All that remained was to check whether their calculations were correct, to test if, in fact, the technology would actually work. This test would become infamously known as the Philadelphia Experiment. Before we continue, we'd like to thank ExpressVPN for sponsoring this video. ExpressVPN is the fastest and one of the most trusted virtual private network services out there. It helps keep your private information private by masking your IP address. Now that recent events make us spend more time at home, we must protect our personal data, as government surveillance agencies can track and collect our private information. ExpressVPN provides a layer of protection to prevent others from being able to see what you're searching for and what sites you visit. I often see YouTube videos which are unavailable or blocked in my country. All I have to do is open ExpressVPN and set the country location I need, and the video gets unlocked. This also works for Netflix shows which are available only in specific countries. I'm currently in Australia and I can't watch The Lord of the Rings on Netflix. But all I have to do is use ExpressVPN, connect to a server in Canada, refresh the page, and I can watch it freely. You can support our channel and get 3 months free by visiting expressvpn.com/universeinside-you. They also have a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you have nothing to worry about. There in the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard sat the USS Eldridge, a ship equipped with large generators and other strange equipment which confused unaware crew members. At a predetermined hour, the equipment was activated. The mighty generators fired up. Suddenly, a bluish-green fog began to surround the Eldridge, and in a flash of light, the ship was gone, disappearing into thin air. A short time later, the Eldridge unexpectedly reappeared over 200 miles away in Norfolk, Virginia, a fact confirmed by the crew of the SS Andrew Forsyth, which was anchored in Norfolk on that day. Then, as suddenly as the Eldridge had appeared, it vanished again, before miraculously reappearing back in Philadelphia. Most incredibly, whatever had happened on its journey, the Eldridge appeared to have actually traveled 10 minutes back in time. Scientists and military personnel in Philadelphia rushed to the ship in a mad scramble to ascertain what had happened. What they found were scenes of unimaginable horror. Crew members covered in terrible burns, some actively engulfed in flames. Others had gone insane, screaming and rambling incoherently. Most disturbingly, some crew members had actually become embedded in the steel hull of the ship, fused, still alive, with body parts sticking out at grotesque angles. This is not the type of thing one sees on the evening news. Indeed, whatever happened that fateful day in Philadelphia allegedly caused the government to abandon the project and attempt to eliminate all record of the Philadelphia experiment ever having taken place. And they might have succeeded were it not for an eccentric author named Morris K. Jessup and the curiosities of circumstance. In 1955, Jessup wrote a book called The Case for the UFO, which spoke of anti-gravity, electromagnetism, and prehistoric superscience, making him something of a celebrity among conspiracy theorists. Perhaps accordingly, in 1956, Jessup received the first of what would become more than 50 handwritten letters from a man calling himself Carl M. Allen. In the letters, Allen claimed to have been a member of the crew of the USS Eldridge the day the Philadelphia experiment had taken place. He described how the ship had been teleported through time and different dimensions, meeting what Allen described as aliens along the way. Shocked by what Allen was saying, Jessup tried repeatedly to investigate the claims, begging Allen to provide physical evidence, but unable to find anything tangible to corroborate the story, it seemed Jessup would have to give up and dismiss Allen as just another crackpot. That is, until 1957, when Jessup was contacted by the U.S. Navy and asked to travel to Washington, D.C. for a meeting with high-ranking government and military officials. Apparently, the Office of Naval Research had received a package containing a copy of Jessup's book, with a series of handwritten notes scrawled within it. The notes spoke of extraterrestrial technology and time travel. While the handwriting of the notes was designed to give the impression that they were written by 3 different authors, Jessup recognized immediately that all 3 were done by Carl M. Allen. After intensive questioning, Jessup left D.C. and returned home, confused as to the Navy's interest in such unbelievable and unsubstantiated claims. Even more curiously, shortly thereafter, the Navy actually published 127 copies of Jessup's book, with the handwritten notes of Allen included. Then in 1959, barely 3 years after his correspondence with Allen began, Jessup was found dead of an apparent suicide. While Allen continued to send letters to his friends and family detailing his experiences with the Philadelphia experiment for many years afterwards, the story...
So the fun thing with the serpent is, how does a serpent talk? And not only that, but why is the serpent's punishment to crawl on its belly when that's what it does?
The story faded from memory, ignored, forgotten. Just another conspiracy theory. The story of the Philadelphia experiment actually goes back much further than 1943 and involves some of the greatest minds in history, including the legendary inventor Nikola Tesla. As early as 1895, Tesla had been experimenting with how space and time could be influenced by electricity and magnetic fields. In March of that year, the New York Herald newspaper published a curious story in which a reporter had found a disheveled-looking Tesla alone in a cafe one afternoon. "I am afraid," Tesla began when greeted by the reporter, "that you won't find me a pleasant companion tonight. The fact is, I was almost killed today. The spark jumped 3 feet through the air and struck me here on the right shoulder. If my assistant had not turned off the current instantly, it might have been the end of me. He described to the reporter how being hit by the electric spark, some 3.5 million volts, had taken him out of his space-time window. I could see the past, present, and future all at the same time, he explained. It seemed as if Tesla was saying his experiments had led to some sort of pre-science or perhaps even some sort of time travel. By the 1930s, Tesla, already a legend, was working at the University of Chicago conducting experiments trying to make a body invisible through electricity. This was the work which would become the foundation of the Philadelphia experiment. In 1939, the work was moved to the Princeton Institute of Advanced Studies. It was there that Albert Einstein reportedly joined the project alongside other top scientists. By 1941, Tesla and these scientists were working on the project explicitly for the U.S. government. It was Tesla and his team who allegedly made the calculations, drew up the technical specs, and even constructed the massive generators for what would become the Philadelphia experiment. But then, before the experiment took place, Tesla suddenly backed away from the project, allegedly warning on his way out of sure disaster if the project went forward, of a personnel problem which would ensue. Tesla, a fervent humanitarian as he was, couldn't bear the horrendous consequences which he predicted would befall the crew members of the USS Eldridge. So he resigned from the project after doing everything he could to prevent the experiment. Of course, in the middle of a global war, the U.S. government did not abandon the research they had poured such resources into. Instead of shutting down the project, they turned it over to John von Neumann, a brilliant mind who, unlike Tesla, was not burdened by moral reservations and would not hesitate to throw caution to the wind, as he had proven during his work on the Manhattan Project, constructing the nuclear bomb. Whatever happened under Neumann's leadership, whatever did or did not take place during the Philadelphia experiment in 1943, that very same year, Nikola Tesla died alone in his hotel room in New York City. Almost immediately after his death, his room was swept up by U.S. government officials. All of his notes and other documents were collected and sent directly to the FBI. The FBI director, J. Edgar Hoover, called Tesla's work most secret. So secret, in fact, that when a 1952 court case ruled Tesla's nephew was the heir to his estate and thus rightful owner of all his personal effects, including his notes, the FBI sent him not the 80 boxes of notes they had recorded, but only 60. What happened to the rest of Tesla's work? And what could these most secret notes have contained? Some have speculated that Tesla was working on some sort of death ray, which the U.S. government wanted for its war effort and wanted to keep a secret. But perhaps it had something to do with the Philadelphia experiment, something to do with Tesla's dire warnings before leaving the project, and the ability to see past, present, and future. The question remains to this day, what type of most secret knowledge did Tesla have, and who else might have had it? If we look at ancient scriptures and stories, we may find many interesting cases of time travel. Some Hebrew traditions tell the story of the prophet Jeremiah and a young boy named Abimelech. The prophet Jeremiah was sitting together with a few of his friends, and there was a young boy. His name was Abimelech. And Jeremiah said to Abimelech, "Go out of Jerusalem. There is a hill, and collect some figs for us." The boy went out and collected the fresh figs. All of a sudden, Abimelech hears some noise and wind in the airs, and he became unconscious. After a time, he wakes up again, and he saw it was nearly the evening. So he runs back to the society, and the city was full of strange soldiers. And he said, "What's going on here? What happened to Jeremiah and all the others?" And an old man said, "That was 62 years ago." Incredible as this story may seem, It is far from the only one contained within the texts of ancient civilizations, which seem to reference time travel. Something similar exists in Christian and Islamic traditions, a story known as the Seven Sleepers, or, alternatively, the Cave of Al-Kahf. In this story, a group of youths hide out in a cave to escape persecution in the year 250 CE. When they emerge from the cave, some 300 years have passed. Of course, these types of stories are not restricted to the tales of the ancients. Consider what has come to be known as the Lordsburg Door, outside the town of Lordsburg, New Mexico. According to locals, the door is a gateway hidden in the desert, a portal which bridges space and time. Many stories have emerged over decades describing UFOs coming through the door. In fact, it is said that in front of the door is a stump with a human leg bone embedded in it, left there from when someone stepped directly out of the door into a tree. This mirrors what was said about members of the crew of the USS Eldridge after the Philadelphia experiment embedded in the steel hull of the ship. Is what is taking place at the Lordsburg Door something similar to what happened in Philadelphia? Or consider the Bermuda Triangle, that notorious area off the southeastern coast of the United States between Florida, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico, where, over the years, many vessels and thousands of people have mysteriously disappeared. Accounts given by pilots of sudden jolts and pulses coming out of nowhere, or the failure of electronic equipment, sound not all that dissimilar to descriptions aboard the Eldridge during the Philadelphia experiment. These types of accounts go back at least as far as Christopher Columbus, the famous explorer who, when he first reached the Bermuda Triangle hundreds of years ago, documented huge columns of fire crashing into the sea in his records. Remember the burning of the Eldridge crew members? But perhaps modern tales of anomaly and ancient myths are not enough to convince of the existence of time travel. Perhaps more tangible evidence is needed. Many would suggest this is where OOPArts, that is, out-of-place artifacts, come into play. An OOPArt is an artifact which does not make archaeological sense based on the time period it was discovered to be from. Over the years, many examples have appeared. In 1991, archaeologists in Russia found a series of small, coil-shaped artifacts in the Ural Mountains, dated at between 20,000 and 318,000 years old. They were coils, spirals, and shafts made from copper, tungsten, and molybdenum. Scientists concluded they could not be naturally occurring, that is, they must have been manufactured. In fact, scientists poured out that the pieces mirrored the components of modern nanotechnology. How could this be possible with artifacts from tens or even hundreds of thousands of years ago? Similar, perhaps even more dramatic examples have appeared elsewhere in Russia, such as outside of St. Petersburg, where archaeologists discovered a strange fossil which turned out to be some sort of machine made up of hundreds of toothed cylinders, metal parts forming a mechanism. Incredibly, it was dated at over 300 million years old. On the other side of the world, there was the discovery of the Klerksdorp spheres in South Africa. These were small balls dated at almost 3 billion years old, and yet their fibrous interior structure and intricate design, within 100,000ths of an inch from absolute perfection, led researchers to conclude the spheres had to have been manufactured by intelligent beings. There are some who have argued that the existence of OOPArts suggests a sort of prehistory, advanced civilizations and technology lost to recorded memory. Others believe they suggest the Earth must have been visited by advanced extraterrestrial life sometime in the distant past. Perhaps it was not aliens, but time travelers. Consider what archaeologists found in Crete in 2017. There they discovered, fossilized in the earth from over 5 million years ago, a trail of human footprints. Note, the human foot is distinctive, even and especially so from our primate ancestors. The human foot has no claws, and the sole of the foot falls flat on the ground. Most importantly, the big toe is in line with the other toes, as opposed to other primates where the big toe sticks out to one side, like the thumb on a hand. In other words, the footprints found in Crete were distinctly, shockingly human. How could this have been possible? Human footprints from a time when human beings did not even exist. How? Unless humans traveled back through time. We have a 20-minute video called Forbidden Archaeology. These artifacts shouldn't exist, which showcase some of the most incredible out-of-place artifacts discovered. A link to the video is in the pinned comment below.
Not bad. down here too on the other team.